Hi everyone, and welcome to StudioJake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to be reviewing episode 5 of The Rings of Power. And before I get into that, also, if you're kind of tired of, these streaming services, these corporate overlords ruining your fantasy fiction, check out my fantasy series. It got the Seven Royals. It's the first book is All Good Things. The second book is Breaking the Stars. It has some of your favorite fairy tale characters. It's got magic, swords. It's got dragons. It's got cosmic power. It's got some very ruthless villains. So definitely check over. They're both available at Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com. But if you want a digital download, sure, you can get this one from Amazon Kindle. However, Breaking the Stars is only available at booklocker.com for a digital download. And I'm going to apologize if you hear noise in the background. I think some of my neighbors are having a good time. Nothing wrong with that, obviously. So, where did we leave off? So, the Harfoots are still traveling. The young one speaks with Meteor Man again. So this is the first heart to heart. Now, remember from the trailers, there was this guy that people were kind of saying looked like Eminem. Well, we finally meet Slim Shady. He and his gang of thugs, or maybe it's a woman. It's kind of hard to tell, honestly. They're checking out the crater where the Meteor Man fell. So the orcs, following this elf who's called Father, is preparing to attack the humans that are taking refuge in the Southlands Tower, and Brownwind warns the humans about it. She pleads with them to stand and fight. A group follows this guy who wants to surrender to Father, and Brownwind's son, the spoiled brat kid, he considers going with them, though he doesn't. I kind of wish he did. That would have been epic. But anyway, we go back to Numenor, to the island of Numenor. Elendil and Isildur have an argument because Isildur, previously he failed his entrance into the Numenor Navy, so his father's kind of mad with him and won't let him go on this mission to Middle-earth that Galadriel begged for. And we also see Isildur's daughter. She doesn't like the journey to Middle-earth, and she's trying to get the Prime Minister's son, who has a crush on her, to do something about it. We see Halbrand. He's busy forging swords, and he is invited to go to a meeting about the expedition. He gives his opinion about, best way to handle the Southlands. He's surprised to learn that Galadriel volunteered him for the trip, and of course Queen Regent Muriel isn't happy that he doesn't seem to know anything, so he and Galadriel kind of argue, and he basically tells her to mind her own business. So we see Harfoots, and they are attacked by wolves, I guess. They're in some sort of bog. I think it shows that they're in the dead marshes, but before it was the dead marshes, I believe. And they're attacked by wolves, but the Meteor Man does like a spell to save them, and it hurts his arm. So back to Elendil. There's some Numenorian warriors training for fight, and Elendil asks Galadriel to train them. So she, of course, humiliates 5 warriors of Numenor, even though, again, Galadriel was never a soldier, never a warrior. But anyway, she has to humiliate them, and she witnesses Halbrand do kind of a trick with a sword. So she convinced not only is he a swordsmith, he's also a warrior. So the Prime Minister's son, the Numenorian Prime Minister, his son begs him to stop the journey, but then the dad kind of tells him there's something bigger going on, but hints that his son can do something about it. Muriel speaks with her father, tells him about the journey, but he tells her not to go because darkness awaits. We go back to the Harfoots. The Meteor Man is trying to heal himself, but while he's like bathing in some water, and while he's doing it, his hand starts to freeze. The little Harfoot girl, she touches his hand and she starts to freeze, and they both see a vision together, and that frightens her, and she runs away from him. So we're back to Durin and Elrond, and there's kind of like this weird tense standoff between Durin, who's the prince of this dwarven kingdom. There's a standoff between him and the High King of this elvish kingdom, and they kind of have like this weird standoff, but they calm things down with a toast. Elrond's kind of mad at the High King. He's like, I did all this hard work. We need the dwarves to finish the forge. And so the king asks him about Mithril, but Elrond remembering his vow to his friend Durin, refuses to tell him anything, but then the High King shows Elrond that the tree is dying, their magic tree, and if they don't get Mithril, the tree may die. So then we go back to Numenor again. The soldiers are celebrating before their trip. Isildur wants to still go, and he has a friend who got promoted, but the friend won't help him, so he tries to stow away, but then he witnesses the Prime Minister's son attempt to sabotage one of the ships, and he succeeds, but then Isildur saves him, and the PM's son says, Isildur saved me, so that convinces Elendil to let his son come on the trip. The Queen Regent all of a sudden now is nervous about this trip, and she tells Galadriel that if Halbrand doesn't come to take his crown at the Southlands, then they're not going. So Elrond then has a heart-to-heart with the elf blacksmith. I think it's Celebrimbor is his name. And they talk about Mithril, and it's revealed that the blacksmith knew all along that they had Mithril. So then Halbrand and Galadriel have a talk, but he's angry at her that she used him and wants him to get involved, and he points out that she doesn't really want revenge, and again they have like this heart-to-heart, and he says, why do you keep fighting? And she says, because I don't know how to stop. Well, that's not very elvish of you. So anyway, in the Southland, the old man who kind of was against Bronwyn, he convinces the humans that came with him to bow before the Father Elf, and they identify him as Sauron, but the Father Elf says, I'm not Sauron. He kind of scoffs at this idea. So then he makes him prove his loyalty by killing one of the men who came with him. So then, of course, there's another heart-to-heart where Arondir and Bronwyn's bratty son, they have a heart-to-heart, and the bratty son reveals that he has the orc dagger, which Arondir discovers is actually a key. It's not a dagger. So when Bronwyn hears this, she considers surrendering, though Arondir convinces her they should still fight, or at least find some way to escape, as the Father Elf is marching toward the tower. So we're back with Elrond, and Elrond admits to Durin that they thought he was sent there to talk about the to talk about the forge, and he admits to him the elves just wanted your mithril all along, but and even says that if you don't help us, our kingdom may die out. And Durin says he will help Elrond, but they have to convince his father first to give the elves the mithril. So then the episode ends with Halbrand agreeing to go with Galadriel to Middle Earth. Elendil's daughter is angry as she sees Isildur and he's going away, and you find out that Isildur has been given like a very low post in the Navy, like where he's just cleaning stables basically. Well, the episode is titled Partings. I wish that I could part ways with this series. I wish it would part ways with us, because it's just not Tolkien. They keep saying that they went back to the source material. I'm starting to think they didn't even read it at all. I'm starting to think they just got a few names that sounded familiar. Like, for instance, there's a song at the beginning of the episode where it's showing the Harfoots doing nothing, and there's a line in the song that not all who wander are lost. Well, the problem with that is that rhyme is part of a song that is about Aragorn. It's not about the Harfoots, and certainly not hobbits, so it just didn't really go. And one of the things I've noticed is that in this particular episode, it was really bad. A woman is always telling a man to be brave. If you're a man, you shouldn't have to be told by a man or a woman to be brave. You should, you might need some encouragement, but not to be told you have to be brave. And this happens all the time. It's really kind of annoying. And it's like during the conversation with Elrond and the High King, I have to say, these aren't acting like elves. Elves are supposed to be wise and smart and ethereal and mystical. They're honestly like Vulcans from Star Trek, and there's nothing wrong with Vulcans from Star Trek. I said this in a previous episode, but they're for Star Trek. And I just think that it's kind of odd that these folks they've never seen any fiction where elves are like this. Like, forget the Lord of the Rings trilogy movie or even the books, elves are often portrayed in this manner, kind of high-minded, sure, but it's just weird. Like they didn't do a modicum of research, and it's really annoying. And one thing I had pointed out in a previous episode is that everything looks new. Nothing looks worn. Nothing looks like it's set in. Everything looks like they just took a shopping trip to Pier 1 Imports. And that was one thing about the original trilogy and even the Hobbit movies. They made things look worn. They made things look like they had some substance to them. And just my final thoughts is, I know I'm kind of hitting the same tree stump over and over again, but Galadriel is not Galadriel. This is just some fake with her name. Why is she teaching men of Numenor how to sword fight? She's supposed to be wise, graceful, and beautiful, but here she's insulting. She's insufferable. And in fact, the show is trying to make you think when she's like this, when people are kind of off-put by her behavior, you're supposed to say, yes, slay queen, but I'm actually kind of like, no, I agree with them. It doesn't make any sense. Like when the PM's son tells his dad, when the Prime Minister's son tells his dad, please don't do this. We can't trust this elf. I was like, yeah, you can't trust her. I wouldn't trust her. She's rude. She's condescending. And like I said, insufferable and insulting. She's not wise, graceful, and beautiful. Sure, they're trying to make it seem that way in the show, but like even when she's like has a moment of joy and her face is supposed to look joyful, it always looks like she's sneering. She can't emote well, the actress. And normally I try to not blame the actors, but in this show the actors actively put themselves into the attacks on the fans who said, hey, this doesn't seem like Tolkien at all. And so yes, I think their name is Morfydd Clark, Morfydd Clark, something like that. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. I mean no disrespect in that manner, but it's just so crazy. J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, they just weren't ready to handle this. Had they just said, hey, Amazon, just let us make like a fictional fantasy story, it'll kind of be in the vein of Tolkien and everything, but no, they just want to slap the Lord of the Rings branding on it. They just want to give names to characters like Isildur, Elendil, Galadriel, Elrond. They just want to slap those names on it like it doesn't matter, and then produce one of the most ridiculous adaptions of the source material. I mean, people owe apologies to the guys who created the animated versions of, I think it was Lord of the Rings, and they did Return of the King, and they did The Hobbit. We owe them apologies. We owe Peter Jackson apologies for our dislike of the Hobbit trilogy. I mean, as inferior as they were to the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, this show is a step below. Like I said, I could see this passable if it didn't have the Lord of the Rings name attached to it, but the fact of the matter is, it does. And so it is incredibly inferior. It is incredibly wanting. If I was Payne or his business partner, McKay, I would be incredibly embarrassed. I wouldn't be proud. And I kind of knew something was up, because as the time was getting closer for the show to be announced, Jeff Bezos was like, I haven't even seen a script. So he was already distancing himself from the show, which is always bad news. And definitely this show is bad news. It is not Tolkien, and all of you real Middle-earth fans, all of you real fans of J.R.R. Tolkien and his works, particularly those based in Middle-earth, keep holding the line, stay strong. Without respect, we reject, as Overlord DVD says. But those are kind of my thoughts on episode 5. Just more slop with the Lord of the Rings branding on it. And I refuse to call this show LOTR. I am only calling it Rings of Power. That's honestly how strongly I feel about the whole thing. If you liked that video, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Give it a thumbs up. And I would be honored today if you would subscribe. No matter what platform you're watching on, please subscribe. Hit that follow button. Share it out all over the place. And check me out on some of my other socials. I've got links in the description below. Also, Check out my website, StudioJakeMedia.com, and consider supporting this channel on StudioJakeMedia.locals.com. It really helps smaller creators out. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.